Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of the Wealthy Legacy Journey. Today, you've got me and Tim. Good to have you today, Tim.
Very much.
And we're going to be talking about those annoying, pesky, frustrating, but sometimes perspective shifting roadblocks that we all hit. We hit them in life, we hit them in business all the time. But, I found that with these obstacles, these roadblocks, you can let them either break you or you can let them help you become a better person, make you a better person, or to break you down, stop you in your tracks. So, with that said, Tim, do you want to kick us off? Like, what, how would you start off the idea of like when it comes to overcoming obstacles? What is that even about? Like, how do we even know about that?
Yeah,
Tell some stories.
that's a tough one because man, I have encountered my share, my more than my fair share of obstacles over the years,
It
and
always feels like more than our fair share.
I don't know what fair share is, but
If I could pick a few less, that would be great.
yeah, exactly. But through the years, when I was younger, I remember starting off in the business world, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I remember facing many obstacles, so whether that was people weren't interested in something that I was maybe selling, or a product that I was working with, or maybe a certain sector that I was in. People were like, "Well, I'm not really interested in that," but or if I wanted to think about doing partner with somebody else, I would think, I'm going to do it on my own because I always thought I'm gonna handle all this on my own. So I took it all on myself, and then when people weren't interested, I took it as a personal jab. So I felt like a punching bag for years, and I realized through the years that number one, it's if you believe in what you're doing, then you just keep moving forward, you keep persevering, right? You keep taking one step after the next step after the next step, and then you learn to pivot. You like you said, you learn to change direction sometimes. But another thing I learned a valuable lesson early on, which is bring people into the team, bring people around you, bring people in, even if it's a joint venture or other people that are just partnering with you or they're working directly with you. Bring other people to the table because there are so many different perspectives and ideas, especially as we talk about we hit these roadblocks, as we dip into these pitfalls and we wonder how we're going to get out. Well, if there's nobody in to throw the rope down into the hole that you just fell in to help you out, you're by yourself. So I learned early on that's really important to keep
Yeah,
people around you and work together as a team with others who bring strong, valuable perspectives to the table.
it's powerful. Yeah, well, and I think too, like when it comes to obstacles, sometimes we create obstacles. We create unnecessary obstacles. So, like one that I think about is like perfect example of just what I literally had to deal with is I had to deal with an upset contractor. Like literally just before this, I was at a house. It was a foundation guy. He got way more frustrated about the situation than was called for. And, basically I just walked in, making sure everything was good to go. And there was a couple places that I wasn't 100% sure about. And so I wanted just some clarification, just to clear up communication between both of us on what was going on in these few little areas. We had some soft spots and subfloor. It's not a big deal. Um, but immediately he got so angry, so defensive, so frustrated. And there's two things. Like I could have retaliated with the same level of frustration and passion in that situation. But if I had, you know, I would have probably created a roadblock for myself where now, like, there's this barrier of anger because we've both displayed anger and I still have to finish the contract. Like, they have to come fix it or I got to pay them or I got to figure out, like, what's going on. And so, like, if I were to just retaliated and countered their frustration and anger at the end of maybe a long, hard week with my own frustration and anger, it would have gotten us nowhere, right? And
Right.
so for me, I've learned, especially from Tim being my dad, is like never burn a bridge. And I did my best to hold it together. And even I called him out on it a few times, like, "Hey, man, you're getting angry. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm just trying to figure out how do we find a resolution for this situation." As we were talking through it, and then I had to say that about 3 times because he was escalating, and I was not going to let that conversation escalate. I didn't want it to. I don't like escalating situations with contractors or partners or anything like that. And so there's always you're always gonna have much better conclusion to a conversation if you can keep it, emotion free, unescalated. If they're happy emotions, that's great, but the anger emotions, like those, cannot come into conversation. But then I think about this guy, especially with Nathan's company, Ambition Group, they've supplied a lot of jobs to this guy, and it always looking for contractors and cycling through, and are these people going to work anymore or not? And he got so frustrated. And it's like, that's going to be my immediate feedback, is like, this guy wasn't good to work with. Like, he got frustrated, he got anger. Like, whenever I tried to make sure that everything was squared away, wasn't even telling him to fix nothing necessarily. It was just, hey, this, just check on this, seemed to be the scope of work. Like, I want to communicate about this. Immediately was met with anger. That's a big deal to me. And so what if that creates a roadblock even inside of his business, where now an entire client stream is cut off? And that could happen, especially because I don't know what other dominoes may have been ticked over. And you tick enough of those dominoes, that's typically what happens. You lose those relationships. And so, I guess as I'm saying this, I'm formulating this idea. So many of the roadblocks that we create or we avoid are through communication alone. And there's definitely some other roadblocks that have nothing to do with communication that we face in business. But how many times do we create and or positively avoid what could have been a roadblock, or create a roadblock for ourselves just because we can't handle our tongue? Right?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, think about it from like a parent's perspective. I know you're not talking about a parent-child, but think about all the emotions that come along with being a parent, and all this we call junk behavior, right? You get the same thing from adults. So that contractor could have been building up and had a really bad week, right? It could have been one disaster after another, and it just went up. And if you wouldn't have went up with them, it wouldn't have been productive. It would have been counterproductive, right? It wouldn't have been, you wouldn't have helped. It would have just escalated out of control. But you did the perfect thing, which is stay where you're at, remain calm, and just set your expectations and just follow through. But you're right, that could have easily been a roadblock for you personally. I mean, it could have just ruined your night. It could have ruined your weekend. It could have ramped over into your relationship with your family, with your wife. I mean, right? It could have snowballed, but you didn't let it. You stopped it dead in its tracks. So I think
when it's crazy,
yeah,
it hits your pride. Speaking of communication, like it makes you feel disrespected, and you just want to be like, I'm not going to be disrespected this way. That's what and so you want to come back and be like, who the heck do you think you are? Talk to me that way. I'm cutting your paycheck, buddy. Yes. But at the end of the day, it's like, who cares? Who really cares? Like, they're the ones who did the work. I understand. You know what? I just have to think at the end of the day, I'm glad I'm not the one who was working out in that crazy tough heat all week. I probably wouldn't be very happy either if that's what I had to do every day, day in and day out. And you know what? Like, for me to show him grace, well, number one, that's a part of my faith, and I hope, if anything else, maybe I'll be the kindest person that he's dealt with through problems. And, he'll be like, man, like, this dude didn't treat me like everybody else treats me. And who knows what kind of seeds that could plant for him in his life. But a lot of that has to do with my Christian faith, but then on top of that, like you said, like, if I had gotten frustrated in that moment, it would have probably snowballed over. But I kept my head cool. I'm confident about how I walked away from that situation. And at the end of the day, like, I kind of blew it off. I was like, man, I wish that guy hadn't been so angry, but I'm not going to let it affect my day. And so did it suck? Yeah, but it's behind me now. The conversation's done. I'll finish it up on Monday, get him paid, however it's going to be sorted. But like, I'm not going to let it ruin my weekend. I'm not going to let it ruin my day. I'm not going to let it ruin the project, just keep on rolling.
And it's great because, even with all the different people we encounter in the business place, or, even just people we encounter in general, a lot of times, especially in business, people behave, there's a reason, right? There's always a reason why people do the things they do. So he could have found that escalating behavior useful, because maybe in the past, every time he does that, the client or whoever he's working with just goes away and says, okay, you know what, whatever you want, you do your thing. And so he basically gets to do what he wants without any conversation, right? The problem goes away. Where if we were just to say, if we were to set our expectations and say, this is what I need, and then if he escalates, and you say the consequences, you lose business. Well, unfortunately, we don't do that, and we should do it with with grace, like you said, but then just cut it off. If more people just cut that business off and said, look, I'm sorry, this relationship's not going to work, then that behavior would change. It would no longer be
Right.
reinforced. But
You got to
unfortunately,
give him that feedback though. You can't
yeah,
just like give him his check and not call him again. Like I
no,
planned.
absolutely.
I'm gonna tell him, hey, you're gonna be the one that picks up this check on money, not one of your guys. When he
Yes,
gets there, I'm gonna have a very straightforward conversation with him. Like, no matter how it ends up playing out, you didn't need to escalate to that point, and I'm gonna make a note of that. And this could cost you jobs in the future because I won't. If I have the option to call somebody else, I probably am because of the way that you handle the situation. This is our first interaction. He's worked with the Ambition Group before, but I'm going to be straight up with him, but I'm going to be calm about it. Like, hey, I get that you may have been frustrated about some other stuff, but the fact that you retaliated in anger over this, not okay. And depending on how he responds, it may be like, you know what, let's just say that one's water under the bridge. We'll move forward. But I can tell you this, some people would respect that. And now on the next job, they're going to know what I expect and they're going to respect me for the way I handle that situation. And then other people are going to be like, who gives a crap? Screw you. I shouldn't say that. Forget you, dude. And, and it's like, you know what? Okay, it's just not a contractor I obviously want to work with then. Like, that's going to solve the problem right there. We're never going to talk to each other again. I'm never probably going to see the dude ever again in my life. We'll go our separate ways. It's okay.
yeah, but he'll
make
remember that for the rest of his life. So if you bring grace in the situation, like you said, that's perfect because maybe he needs that right now. He needs that grace. This relationship may not work, and you may never work with him again. But hopefully this will have an impact. But I think when you talk about obstacles, this is a really great point that you're driving home. Is that you need to surround yourself not only with people you work with, but people that work for you or that you have contractors. Surround yourself with the people that you're going to work well with. And the ones you don't, you need to cut them off. There's tons of people out there, right? There's a lot of contractors. There's a lot of people who want to do business. So surround yourself with positive people that are willing to play together and give each other grace. Now we're going to have a bad day, right? But it can't be an ongoing thing, and you have to treat people with respect. So put those people around you that treat you with respect. That's so key. I love the way you put that.
Then another story that I think about when I think about overcoming obstacles, this one goes a little bit back for me. I think about my first two big flips. I forget what the second one's called now. It's funny how it's such a big deal in the moment, but then after some time, it was in Fort Worth. And then the first one was Bright. I'll never forget Bright. And they were really hard. And those obstacles, a lot of them were learning curve obstacles. And I definitely got in over my head, which is absolutely amazing for learning, but it can be really stressful, especially when obstacles come up that you have no idea how to handle, and but I think something I want to say is, and this is going to be a really raw and real moment. I remember whenever I hit some of those obstacles, really struggling with some thoughts of completely wanting to escape the situation. Whether it was like, I wish I could just burn this house down. I wish I could just sell this house as is, burn it down, take the insurance claim, whatever, that's wrong. Of course, I've never done that. Or even to the place, like, I know it gets so dark sometimes where you think about just taking yourself, like ending it, because you feel so overwhelmed by the situation that you're in. And, I think first kind of obstacle that we talked about was communication type of obstacles. This type of obstacle is more of a situational obstacle that can create stress, anxiety, worry, depression, that can take you some really dark places. And, I think a huge part of overcoming those obstacles is that you have to have a support system around you, and you have to be raw and real with that support system. I think about support system I have now around me in business. It's huge. When I'm having a tough day, I can text, I text Tim and Nathan specifically a lot. I'm like, hey, such and such happened. Like, it hit me like a freight train. I need you guys to pray for me. I'll jump on the phone with one of them and just like talk you through the situation. You realize, like, it's really not as big of a deal as I thought it was. And I think this kind of goes back to what Tim said, is like, don't lone wolf it. Like, this journey is so, like, the journey of life, the journey of business, like whatever you're doing, it's so lonely by yourself. So don't lone wolf it. But another thing I would say too is don't pretend that you know everything, because then you have such a high expectation set for yourself. You feel nervous about it. You feel that weight and anxiety. Maybe other people can barrel through that better than I can. But just this morning at a breakfast, I sat down with a guy who's done a lot of business, and he wanted to figure out how we could, do like some sort of JV thing between NK Legacy Properties and what he's working on. Something may come of it, but I've been really working on being raw and real, and I just said there, and I'll say it here confidently, Nathan's done way more flips than I've done. Nathan's probably on his own done more land deals. Now, I've done certain types of deals that Nathan hasn't done, but he's done more volume than I've done, and that's okay. And I'm coming to a place where I'm more and more okay with that, saying, hey, there's other people, there's a lot of other people out there, in fact, that have done way more deals out than I have. Now, there's even more people out there who have never touched real estate or have never done a deal, and I've done more than those people. But as far as the people in my space, there's plenty of people who have done more deals than me. That's okay. Here's what I know I've done. Here's what I know I'm good at. And I'm just going to keep plugging along. I'm going to keep doing what I know I do well. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to grow and expand. I am. But it takes the pressure off. Like when I was talking with this dude, and I was like, just telling him, here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'm not good at. I was trying to be humble. And then at one point in the conversation, we were talking about different things. And I was explaining like some different ways you could structure deals and deal types that I've done in the past. He was like, wow, you say you didn't like know a ton, but like you really do know a whole lot. And it's funny because there's actually something in the Bible that talks about that, about not putting yourself at the head of the table, and then being sent down, but instead sitting, away from the head of the table and being called up. And it's like, I can't even tell you how good it felt to have really worked on humility and, explaining where my weaknesses are and where some of my strengths are, what I really knew were strengths. And then having somebody like actually, kind of say, hey, I actually feel like you're stronger in some areas than you said. And I heard it said so well one time, humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking of yourself less. And so it's like, how can we do that? And, I think when we're prideful and we start thinking of ourselves more and thinking more of ourselves and thinking we're all that in a butter biscuit and trying to tell people that we've done things that we haven't really done, and then push comes to shove and reality comes, and now people are expecting us to step up to the plate and hit a home run when we've never even hit a baseball before. Like, that puts on an enormous amount of pressure. Now you're to a place you feel like you can't back out. Whereas if you just said, hey, I'm really good at racquetball. I've never played baseball before, though. But you know what? I know how to swing an object at a ball and hit it, and I'm going to give it my absolute best. And now people know what to expect. But with that being said, when you get out there to play baseball, give it 100%.
Yeah.
Don't give it 50% because you don't know what to do. Give it 100%. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally. One of the things that comes to me as you're talking through this is, you have to, sometimes when you keep hitting an obstacle and you don't make it through it, like I remember when I was younger, before I really started learning some of the tools that I have now, and I still face these issues, I would put my head in the sand because I got put in a pedestal all through my childhood that I was up here. I remember my parents and family members saying that I was going to be the next president of the United States and all those things. But because they put me up so high, I thought I always took it around that like I could do everything. I could never let anyone know that I couldn't do something. So because of that, I was always walking around in fear with anxiety. And so when I couldn't do something, and I would just want to escape. And you talk about, the escape and you feel like you want to escape. Well, I did it. I spent 15 years in drugs and alcohol and all these different areas. And I remember that was my escape. And I quickly went to it. I didn't want to go share with somebody else that I couldn't do something. I would rather just run away and put my head in the sand. And I realized that when you're facing an obstacle, you have to really look at it. And you hit one of them, which is have the knowledge. But we talked about this before with having those areas where you have the big why, right? That's the big one, right? Why are you doing this? If you keep like saying, "Oh, I want to do this, I want to do it, I'm not doing it," maybe the why is not big enough for you. Or you don't have the right people that are reinforcing you in your environment, or you don't have the right tools, right? Or you don't have the physical ability or mental ability or emotional ability, or you don't have the right training. I mean, you just hit that. Maybe you just don't know how to do something. You say, I'm going to go do something. I'm going to do X, but you've never done X, or so you have to go and you have to find the right mentor, or you have the right training, and be around those people who are successful at it and grow with them. You can't start as president of the United States. You got to start as a school board member, right? You've got to work your way through the steps to get to where you want to go. Or set those reminders so that, like you said, you got to be persistent every day. You have those alarms. You talk about it all the time. You have those alarms that go off every day to remind yourself to do something. And a lot of those somethings are working on steps toward bigger goals. Some of those somethings are just immediate. I need to do something right now. But I think you have to have a blended of all those things. You need to have that awareness. Otherwise, you just go through life and you keep hitting walls and you wonder why. That's not a good way to live.
Yeah. And, and I think a great, one more example I'd love to talk about that I think kind of rounds out even what we've said so far is what the decision that we made today with Algorithmos. And it was not an easy decision. In fact, it was kind of a painful, disappointing decision. But, basically, we were supposed to launch September 4th, and we had this really good uptick from like beginning of June to mid-July. We were up like 49.5%, right? It was like amazing. But then from mid-July to now, we've kind of had this like steady kind of sideways downwards trend, and we're down from that 49.5% high, 16%. We're down to like 34%, 34.5% up from where we started. So, it kind of like went way up, and then it's kind of come back down to like here. So we're still up 34%, but we've come down from our absolute high, like 15, 16%. And so, we made this decision for our money, for other people's money that are investing with us, to push back going live with the bot. And it's hard because that was so exciting and it felt like this big moment. But, it's funny because Tim and I were talking and we were like, man, if we were down 16% with other people's money, well, let's just say we had just happened to start mid-July and we were down 16%. We had no data to show us that, hey, after coming down like so much percentage, like after that, we started to climb again in our value. If we didn't actually have that, we would have been setting ourselves up for failure. We'd have been setting ourselves up for our own roadblock right there. Because, we were talking about how like that would probably put us in a situation where it'd be hard to sleep at night. It'd be hard to like unwind and relax because we had no data showing us, how that it did work out in the end, right? Even though we've been seeing this work for about 2 years now, we really only have 3 months of hard data because of having everything done and built out now. So, I think that sometimes overcoming roadblocks just means avoiding them altogether, and trying to step away, trying to get a different perspective just by stepping away from the situation far enough to look at it and go, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, if we wait another 30, 60, 90, maybe even 120 days all the way to the end of 2023 just to see how this trend ends up working out, that it does correct and turn and go back up for, a long haul profit, then we look at that and we go, okay, that's awesome. And we don't set ourselves up for a roadblock that we know could be coming because we change our perspective and we just slow down and we just take our time. We don't have to be in a rush for everything.
Yeah, that's the whole thing you've talked about from the beginning is not making any emotional decisions, right? That would have been an emotional decision, not based on data. One of the things I've learned through the years from corporate America, I've worked with small companies, large companies, worked for myself, is that the planning piece is something that people love to race through because they want to get right to the execution, right? They're like, I'm tired of planning. let's go. Let's get this thing on the road. Well, the planning, from my perspective over many, many years in many different areas, the planning piece is the most critical. Without the right planning, and like Kendell said, without the willingness to look at the data and let the data drive your decision on when to execute or when to go live, then you're just making an emotional decision. That emotional decision will, again, from my experience, will run you smack into a wall every time. But the decision based on data will help you to make sure that, and sometimes you may have to pause, like Kendall said, and slow down a little bit, and be
Absolutely.
willing to wait a little bit longer to get things going, but the outcome will be so much better.
Yeah.
So much better.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, as we've been talking, when I look at overcoming roadblocks, there's 4 kind of steps that I think we've come up with. Step number 1, you have to keep a cool head. When you come up to that roadblock, keep a cool head. Number 2, be humble. And if you think you're already humble, figure out how to be humbler. I just made that up, trademarking that right now. Be humbler. Uh, Number 3, surround yourself with the right people and the right process for whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then finally, step number 4, slow down, shift your perspective, and try to think a few steps ahead. Think of life and business as a little bit of a game of chess. Try to look a few moves ahead and see how can you just avoid those roadblocks altogether. You're not going to be able to avoid all of them, of course, but any ones that you even think may be coming, even if they're unavoidable, is how do you prepare for them as best as you can. So that's the 4th step. Keep a cool head, be humble, surround yourself with the right people and the right process. Step number 4, slow down, shift your perspective, and work to figure out ways to either avoid the roadblocks or prepare for the stuff that's coming. And that's powerful. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much overcoming roadblocks. But is there any final golden nuggets or thoughts that you would like to conclude today's episode with for people to walk away and go, man, I got this, to specifically apply this lesson into my wealthy legacy journey? Here's how I plug it in.
Well, I just want to leave you with one final note from my perspective, and that is life is challenging, right? Anybody that says life's easy hasn't lived that long, right? I've lived many, many years, and there's been many, many different challenges. So you're going to face obstacles in your life. So because of that, I challenge you to add things into your life that you enjoy. Add those things that are fun. Find time through your day and your week where you can go. Kendall and I just talked about this. We're going to go hiking here pretty soon. We're going to be going on a 12-mile hike. We spend so much time.
We're going to soak up the weather that's coming because 110 has been hot.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. Find those things that you enjoy and make sure you're filling those, so you're not just simply in the drudgery all day of building your business or working for whoever, or you're doing your thing. You're in the grind every day, because it can become overwhelming to the point where you do feel like you need an escape. So make sure you have those things that you're looking forward to. I think that having that hope, even those small things that you build in, are so critical.
That's good. I think I would say just quit taking yourself so seriously and get comfortable in your own skin, because it's what you're going to have to live with for the long haul. And I think so many people, when it comes to this stuff, is sometimes, especially when you're feeling so stressed and so overwhelmed with the situational roadblock, is because you're taking yourself too seriously. And maybe you're struggling to reach out and ask somebody for help that you should ask for help, perspective, advice, whatever kind of help you're looking for. Maybe you struggle to ask for help because you take yourself too seriously, or maybe you're afraid of what they say and you're taking life too seriously. So I don't know what you're taking too seriously, but I think all of us tend to take life, situations, other people, ourselves way too seriously. Now, I mean, obviously there's a level of professionalism that we have to maintain in business, but don't overthink it. Don't let business destroy you, or it won't be fun. Something I've really been learning lately and trying to implement is how can I just enjoy the process, and a huge part of that is just saying, I love today. I love the little things that I have. I'm grateful that I'm not at that next place, because what I'm going through right now is preparing me for that next level. And so if I was at that next level already, I would be stressed out of my mind because I hadn't gone through what I need to right now to prepare for it. So this right now that I'm going through is getting me ready for that. And I can tell you this, you know, now like we're looking at buying properties and, you know, all in budget that clear $500,000. I wouldn't have been able to like mentally handle that kind of budget, that kind of plan, unless I had gone through the deals where like my rehab budget was 20 grand, 30 grand, and I stressed about it and I was out of my mind. And now like something came up the other day and it was like, oh, 5 grand, like not a big deal. It was like on a budget, it was a big budget and there was room and stuff. But you know, it was like sometimes, but I would have let 5,000 freak me out if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through. So I'm
Can
grateful for the hard
can
situations.
I have one final quick note? Just you made me think about
Sure.
this. I think that one of the things, if somebody were to hand you, and I just ask you to think about this, somebody were to hand you $10 million and said, "This is yours, and you're set for life financially, but you still have to work a 9 to 5 doing something." What would that something be? What would you be doing? Because if you could find that passion, if you can find that thing that you love, go do that. If you're not doing, try to figure out how to switch and pivot and go do that. Because I promise you, the obstacles that you'll face as you go through that will be much easier, and the challenges you'll face, you'll look forward, not to the, you know, getting the wall you'll hit sometimes, but you'll enjoy going through the motion because you're working towards something that you enjoy and that you really love. So I challenge people to just find that thing that they love. Life is too short not to be doing what you enjoy in life.
I agree. You're gonna hit roadblocks either way, so might as well hit ones that feel a little better, I guess. So awesome. Well, it was really cool talking about roadblocks, especially coming out of that situation from earlier today. I think these steps are super solid. And I guess my biggest hope is that you're able to apply this to your life, to your business, and it's able to really just help take you to the next level. So with that said, thanks so much for stopping in today with me and Tim. It was great seeing you, or great being able to talk with you. And as always, here's to you and your own personal, wealthy legacy journey. See you next week.